Hello, everyone. Welcome back to a new recovery story. Today, I'm sitting down with beautiful Charlotte, who I haven't talked to in a little while. So I'm actually really excited to talk to you today and kind of like have a refresher and also hear how you've been. So welcome, Charlotte. How are you feeling today?
Thank you. Yeah, no, I'm feeling good. I'm happy to see you as well. I think it's been a while since we've spoken like face to face. So, yeah, no, I'm feeling good. It's a bit cold here in the UK, but other than that, I'm doing good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, we've gone a bit back and forth like through WhatsApp, which I really appreciate. Charlotte has been sending me updates on how incredible she's been doing. Which is also why I asked her to do the recovery story because I think you'll have a lot of great things to share to people today. You are someone like if I could give a brief introduction on how I perceive you, I think you are someone that like despite having gone through so much, you are just like a rock, you keep powering through and you've come out so beautifully polished at the end of this whole thing, like a diamond. That's how I would
Oh, thank you.
kind of compare it. So yeah,
Yeah,
maybe
that's really sweet. You're gonna make me emotional. I'm probably gonna end up crying at some
it's
point during this, but
okay.
but no, thank you. That's really sweet.
Yeah, and it's been really nice hearing your updates and well you've been doing at work and everything. So I'm just really happy to have you today.
Yeah, thank you. No, it's been really good. I think it was around this time last year that we first started having our sessions. So it's been interesting, like now the winter's setting in and things are getting cold. I think it's reminding me of this time last year. And it's been really interesting just to reflect on, yeah, how much has changed and how far I've come in like such a short space of time. Because I think when I first started having sessions with you, I just was quite hopeless and felt like it would never change and I'd always just be stuck in that place. And so yeah, it does make me quite emotional sometimes to reflect on it and be like, oh wow, yeah, I really did get out of that place. And so yeah, hopefully sharing some of this stuff will help other people, like
Absolutely.
reassure them that they can get out of it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And how are you feeling like these days? Like if you could start with that, maybe start off on a positive note.
Yeah, I feel generally good. I mean, I'm not 100% anxiety free, and I do still have some days when I do feel anxious, but the difference is now that I'm able to handle it and I'm able to deal with it in a way where it's not like running my life and I'm not making decisions from a place of fear or there's nothing that I can't do anymore because of my anxiety. And there was a point where, I could barely leave the house because I was just so stressed and anxious about everything.
Mm.
So yeah, most days I don't have any anxiety at all. And when I do, I can sort of just, yeah, get the perspective on it that I need and comfort myself through it. And yeah, I even had this thought this morning that I just feel so much more comfortable in my own body now. I think like a big part of my anxiety for me was health anxiety, and maybe we'll get into that at some point, like worrying about what my body was doing and all the different symptoms that I was having. And yeah, sometimes I do still get that, but now generally I just yeah, just trust that my body is doing what it's supposed to be doing and it's keeping me alive in the way that it's supposed to. And so yeah, I just feel free. Like maybe that sounds really cheesy, but I feel
No,
very
it's
liberated from
wonderful.
that place where I felt so trapped and stuck. And yeah, I'm sort of excited for the future as well. And like I say, thinking, okay, if I can do that in a year, then what can I do in the next year? Where else can this go? So yeah, I think I'm definitely much more optimistic and just like happy as well. Like I can sort of just be present with other people and enjoy my day and laugh and find things funny, like silly little things. And everything was so serious, I think, when I was stuck in that place, it was really hard to relax and enjoy my day to day. So yeah, it's like night and day really, I think, where I am now from where I was when I first met you.
Oh, that makes me so happy. I'm so glad to hear that. And you really deserve nothing less. So that makes me very happy to hear. So do you maybe mind sharing kind of where your whole journey with anxiety and DPDR started and kind of walking us through like how it started for you, where it originated from, what your symptoms were, and just kind of sharing your side of the story.
Yeah, so I think I don't know, I'll try and not make it too long-winded, but I guess I was always like an anxious person. Like when I was a kid, I think I was very nervous, very shy. And so in some senses, I've always had anxiety, though I didn't really recognize it as anxiety when I was younger. And I don't really identify that way anymore as like an anxious person. That's why I sort of say it in inverted commas. I think I've felt that way before, but I can see that's just sort of a like a label now that I was putting on it. But yeah, it got to the point where it was really bad in 2023, so that sort of springtime 2023. So I'd had quite a traumatic event happen the year before. So I'd lost a family member in a very like, yeah, sudden, shocking way. And I think that set my brain off, as happens when you have a traumatic event. It's sort of like, I don't know, yeah, unlocked something in my brain where I was just seeing danger everywhere. I was seeing the possibility for terrible things to happen everywhere, which I'd never really had to that extent before. And yeah, this was like the summer of 2022 that happened. And then my way of dealing with it was not very healthy. So I was like using drugs and alcohol to sort of manage my feelings, which I'd been doing for quite a few years before that anyway, but it sort of ramped up after this event happened. And then it was around, yeah, the springtime 2023 where it all just sort of bubbled over. And the trigger for it actually, I think, was a mushroom trip. So I took mushrooms. I think we spoke about this. I took mushrooms like alone in my bedroom, which is just the stupidest thing I could have done. I definitely don't recommend that to anybody. And I think part of the reason I did it is because I'd heard a lot of this stuff online about how mushrooms can help with trauma and help you understand yourself deeper and whatever. And maybe that's true, but I think, you know, if you're going to do that, you need to do it in a control setting with a professional, somebody who's going to guide you through it. And yeah, just me kind of like drunk alone in my room was just not the best place for it. And yeah, it was just a really scary, I had a really bad, scary trip. It lasted a long time and I felt like I was dying basically. Like my heart rate was going really fast, and I felt like I was losing touch with reality. And it was, yeah, it was just really scary. And I woke up the next day after the trip, and I was sort of sober again. The drugs had worn off, but I think it just felt like my whole reality had changed, and I suddenly was scared to go outside. I was scared of my own body. Like my perception of everything was very heightened, so like sounds and lights and everything was just too much. And I guess that was really the trigger. So I think I was probably heading in that direction anyway, because I was getting more and more anxious and I wasn't taking care of myself. But that mushroom trip seemed to sort of flip the switch in some sense. And then yeah, and then I started having panic attacks, really bad panic attacks on almost a daily basis. And it could be triggered by almost anything, like getting on the train. So I was living in London at the time and I had quite a few panic attacks on the tube, like the underground train. Um, like even going to the shops, like going to the supermarket, I would have like the lights would be too bright and the sounds were overwhelming. And I had a lot of these sort of paranoid thoughts as well. Like I would see other people in the shop and I felt like they were all looking at me, or everyone was like being suspicious of me, or I had this weird, I don't know if it's like solipsism, is it? But this weird idea that like almost like the Truman Show, like I felt like I was the only person that was real in reality and everyone else was I don't know, it's quite a sort of arrogant thought, I guess, but it came from this place of fear, like, oh no, what if nothing is real anymore? And um yeah, it was really scary. And I think I didn't really have as much depersonalization, I don't think, but I did have a lot of derealization where everything just looked and felt weird and off. And the more I focused on it, the worse it got. So I'd sort of like focus on, oh, that light is really weird, or it's like shining in a weird way. And then it would just get worse. And then I'd start to spiral and then I'd be in a panic attack. Um, so yeah, it was really scary. And a couple of the panic attacks were so bad that one of them I went to A&E, which is the emergency department in the hospitals in the UK. And yeah, because I was convinced I was having a heart attack. And yeah, I wasn't. Obviously, everything was fine, but I had another one at a train station, like a huge panic attack where the station staff called an ambulance to come and get me because yeah, I was sort of telling everybody that I was dying. And it was just, yeah, it was awful. Like I don't know. Yeah, I've not had a panic attack for months now, but it's such a scary thing
Mhm.
because it really just felt like, I mean, my two biggest fears were I'm dying or I'm losing my mind, and they just felt like very real, vivid fears, like I'm on the verge of dying or losing touch with reality completely. And it was just, yeah, so terrifying. And I just couldn't, because I was just so scared of my body and scared of my mind and yeah, scared of myself in a weird way. Like that was the biggest fear, is that my body was going to, or my mind was going to do something to hurt me. And yeah, it was just really terrifying. I don't know if I've gone into enough detail on the symptoms there, if you want me to talk about it a bit more.
It's not it like I'm trying to like I always my brain works very visual and I'm like picturing you almost feeling trapped in your own body of like your own body or your own human experience becomes like a nightmare that you become trapped in or like a very unpredictable, scary monster that can just kind of be triggered by anything.
No, that's what it was. I just couldn't trust myself or my body to just do like normal things, or I was so hyper aware of my body and what it was doing. And I was just terrified that, like I said, my heart would just stop at any moment or my brain would turn off, or and I had a lot of sort of anger and resentment towards myself and my own body as well, that it was doing this. And it did feel like I was being sort of attacked by my mind and my body. And obviously the more that I got angry and resisted what was happening, the worse it got. It was just like this, had this compounding effect.
And what was then the moment that you started getting clarity on what was going on and how to get better? Or what was it the moment that things started to switch for you where you started feeling like a lot of people have either it's like the very slow build up or they have like a moment or an experience that kind of makes them feel like, okay, there's another way possible other than continuing to run away from myself. Like, do you remember
Mm.
what that moment was for you or how you took that first step in changing your approach and starting to feel better?
Um, do you mean in terms of starting to get help, or do you mean in terms of actually like
No,
when
or
I
like
started
for
to,
yourself. Because like obviously now you're like a world of difference in like what you're now describing. And I guess I'm curious about because I think when we met, like when you messaged me, you were already kind of starting to do a little better and you already had
yeah,
gotten help before. So I guess I'm curious, like, do you remember, was there like a moment where you were like, okay, something has to change. I'm like willing to work on this and try and find
right.
help, or like what did you starting to get out of that pit look like?
Mm.
So maybe how long do you feel like you were really trapped in that scary, dark place?
Yeah, so I think the really intense panic attacks lasted for maybe 3 or 4 months, I think. And then one of the big ones that I had when I ended up in A&E, it was sort of drug induced, like I'd been smoking weed, and that was part of what triggered the panic attack and then sent me to A&E. And I remember leaving the hospital, and the doctor was really lovely, and I told him that I'd smoked weed and like that I'd taken these mushrooms recently and stuff. And he was sort of joking with me because I said to him in the A&E department, I was like, "Oh, I'm never gonna take drugs again. Like I'm done. I'm just gonna be sober." And he was sort of joking, like, "Oh yeah, we hear that quite a lot, and you'll probably be back in a few weeks' time or whatever."
Oh
Just he was
God,
just trying to make me feel. I think he was just trying to make me feel better about it. He was just sort of,
you'll be
yeah, trying
back.
to.
That's not, that doesn't sound very,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You'll be back.
you'll be back
Um,
here.
But I think he was just saying, people say that all the time
Yeah,
that they're
yeah.
going to, and they never actually do. And I remember leaving the hospital and walking back to my flat in London. I was like, no, no, I have to stop. This has to be it now. I can't keep doing this to myself. And I think because I recognized that a lot of what I was doing, and this is maybe where my story is a bit different from other people, like, yeah, it was triggered by a traumatic event, but it was also the what I was doing to myself, the addictive sort of patterns that I had. And um yeah, but it was maybe that was the breaking point really, where I was like, I just can't keep doing this. I have to start taking care of myself and yeah, and start taking my own health seriously, I guess. I think also because of the family member that I'd lost, having that as a perspective of like how quickly life can change and end. And I think I realized that yeah, I wanted to live basically. I wanted to carry on like
Mhm.
living life, and the way that I was existing at that time, it wasn't living, I was just so trapped in my own mind and my own body. And so I guess it was kind of a rock bottom moment, I guess, where I just had to get to the point where I was like, I just can't carry on like this. It's just not, this is not what life is supposed to be. And then that was really when I started to, yeah, so I did get sober from that point, and I haven't taken drugs or smoked weed or anything since that exact day, which is about 18 months ago. And yeah, and then I started getting counseling and therapy. And then I think a few months after that, I started having sessions with you. And then it was just a process of like, yeah, starting to trust myself again, really. But yeah, I would say if anyone is having problems with like drugs or alcohol or anything like that, I think that has to be the first thing to change, is to stop putting that stuff into your body, because that is just putting you on like high alert, and it's making your body more hyper aware of things, and that is going to add to the anxiety. Um, yeah, so that was just kind of my experience.
But did you use the drugs and the weed and everything to deal with your anxiety at that point, or was that to deal with other things?
I think it was a bit of both. Yeah, I think when I'd first started smoking weed a long time ago, it was to deal with anxiety, and it did help at first, but then after a few years, it actually was causing me more anxiety to smoke, and especially like social anxiety. I would feel very disconnected from my environment and from other people as well. Um, but yeah, I think at this particular time I was using it just to mask my feelings, like the grief and the trauma and the sadness and stuff. I just didn't want to face any of that. And so, by smoking or drinking, it was just an easy way of like pretending that everything was fine. And um yeah, but you can't really carry on that way, or for me anyway, it was just I was never dealing with the actual feelings or the problems. I was just putting this sort of blanket on them, but the blanket wasn't very effective. Or I think about it as like, it's like if you're trying to tidy up your room and you sort of shove everything into a cupboard and you
Yeah.
just keep shoving stuff in, and then eventually the door is just going to burst open because it doesn't have enough space to keep it all in. And I think that's just what happened with me, is that I was trying to shove everything down, and it was just, yeah, it wasn't staying down. So yeah, it made it more painful than when I did have to deal with it all when I got sober. But yeah, I mean, it's one of the things that I'm the most grateful that I've done, actually, is to get sober and like to actually face that stuff, because it was just, yeah, stuff grows in the darkness as well. I think if you don't look at stuff and you don't face things, it only gets bigger and more scary. And yeah, the best thing to do is just turn around and face it, even when it is, or it does feel terrifying to do that. But yeah, I'm so glad that I've done it, because I've cleared out so much of that stuff now, and I can actually move forward. Like, it's not holding me back anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of the work that we do with anxiety is just realizing that we are strong enough to feel it, and just like realizing that we can be confident that when we do look at these feelings, that we're not going to like disappear into eternal darkness, that, oh, this is really scary, and rather it's grief or fear or sadness or anger, whatever the emotion is. Like we always think once we face it and actually let it in, like it's gonna make us go crazy, or we're not going to be able to handle it. And I think we undermine how strong we really are. And that's what I meant with the rock. Like you're so strong, you can handle so much. And I think a lot of the process for you was just realizing that, and like realizing that, oh, wait a second, I actually can rely on myself when these feelings come up, and I actually can feel them, and I'm strong enough to just let myself feel them. So I'm curious now that you haven't, or what, you opened the cupboard, or the cupboard was open, like you
Yeah.
described, do you still put stuff in the cupboard when it comes up, or do you let yourself feel it now?
Yeah, I let myself feel things, and I actually sort of, I don't know, in a weird way, I enjoy feeling my feelings now. Like even the sad feelings or the difficult feelings. Like, I love crying, and I used to hate crying or like stop myself from crying. But now crying is like the best release for me. I always feel so much lighter and clearer after I've cried and let things out. And I journal a lot now as well, so I like write out my feelings. And I think sometimes I do put things. I wouldn't say I put it away, but I do put things to the side. So like, if I'm at work or I'm in public or something comes up, I'm able to be like, okay, there's something there. I'm going to sort of put it on like a little post-it note in my mind and like come back to it later. But I always do find time to then come back to it and allow it to come up. And yeah, it's once now that I've got the hang of that process, it's actually a really natural and enjoyable thing. And I think like part of what I was going through in the sessions with you was learning to face my anxiety, this one specific emotion. But I think it became about something so much bigger than that. And it was about facing all of my emotions, like say the grief and sadness, and yeah, not just fear. And yeah, it's given me this sense of my own inner strength, which I think I can see now I always had. And like everybody has that strength within them to face their fears or to, feel whatever it is that they're supposed to feel. But it's just like you say, realizing that you have the strength and finding it within yourself. And now that I have it, yeah, this is why I can go anywhere and do anything now because I know whatever happens, whatever comes up, I'll be able to handle it. I've got that trust with myself now that I just didn't have before. And it's, yeah, it's kind of crazy to think that a year ago or 18 months ago, I was so terrified to feel emotions. And now, like I say, I love that I have this full range of emotions that I can feel. And it's, yeah, I'm just not afraid of any part of myself anymore. I'm not afraid of my anxiety. I'm not afraid of my grief. And doesn't mean those things aren't there or that they aren't difficult at times, but there's just not this extra layer of fear on top of it. I don't resist anything anymore. It just all kind of happens. And yeah, it's just such an easier way to live as well. I was like using so much energy fighting everything off, and it's actually easier. That's where the idea of surrender comes in, I guess. Like surrender can feel like, giving up or like allowing things to overwhelm you, but actually it's just a much more natural way of living because it's just, yeah, I'm no longer putting up a fight against my own self anymore. I'm just letting it be there.
Mm,
Yeah.
absolutely. And you're a great writer, and I think that's actually one of the things that you is now going to make you an even better writer is because now that you are so much more in touch with your emotions and able to kind of let them flow, I feel
Mm.
that's going to help you as an artist or a writer too, to like not write from the head, but actually write from the heart because the heart's open now and you can connect to what's in there.
Yeah, yeah, I hope so. And it also helps me to connect with other people as well, because I'm no longer afraid of like other people's emotions or afraid of like, oh, if someone's going to ask me a certain question that's going to bring up an emotion in me and I won't be able to handle that. And yeah, because I think I was afraid of myself and maybe afraid of everyone else as well during this time. And now that's just not true. I can naturally have more connections with people. So yeah, it's amazing really. I sort of have to pinch myself sometimes that I'm just so much, yeah, in such a better place than I was.
I'm so proud of you, Charlotte. Really,
Oh, thank you.
uh, like I'm gonna be happy all day now because
Good. Yeah, I mean, it was like thanks so much to your help as well in the sessions that we had because I think I just needed that support and just for someone to tell me to keep going and also like I think sometimes you gave me a bit of tough love as well, which was kind of what I needed because I was in yeah, I could be in quite a hopeless place and I was ready to just throw it all away and fine, I'll just have panic attacks forever. And I think you were quite good at being like, no, you can do this, you can handle it. And yeah, it was exactly what I needed at that time. So yeah, I'm just so grateful to you and all the stuff you taught me. And I still use a lot of the stuff from your course as well, like the beliefs exercise. So I've been trying to do some work on some stuff like other beliefs in my life recently, and I still use that exercise. And yeah, like I said, it's about a much bigger thing than just anxiety or DPDR. It's about like, yeah, life in general, really.
yeah, it's so good that you mentioned that because I think um, we get so focused and obsessed around the symptoms that we forget that like where the symptoms are coming from sometimes. Um, And it's so interesting how actually what this whole process teaches you is, in a way, is really getting to know your own nervous system, where it's connected to, how it feels safe, what beliefs you have that make it feel unsafe. And I've always like I've always believed for everyone that gets through this that like the things you learn to get through this, you can learn to get through anything in life. And
Mm.
it's sometimes only the start of like a whole growth journey that can lie ahead of that. So I'm glad to hear that you're still, that it's not like, oh, I'm recovered now, I'm not working on myself anymore, but that you're still like, okay, what else can I find more peace with or more happiness with? Um,
Yeah, definitely. I think it's like a lifelong journey. I think one thing for me is I do have to stop myself from getting stuck in this place of like constantly working on myself as well. And that's something I think that happened during our sessions where I was trying to get the recovery process right. Like I was trying to get it perfect and do it in the right way. And sometimes that can actually get in the way of your progress. And so sometimes it's about actually putting down the journal and like not focusing so much on doing the work and just going out and living life. And there was a period maybe like in the last 6 months or so where I felt the best that I'd felt in a long time, but I wasn't really living still. And so I had to make this decision of like, okay, I've done enough of the work now I can just sort of go out into the world and like put it to use, because what's the point in doing all that work and going through all that struggle if it's not to then be able to actually enjoy life again. And so that's kind of the point that I'm at now. But yeah, I mean, I'm sort of, or I'm sort of maybe too self-aware sometimes, so I always have this awareness of things that I can work
I know
on.
that feeling.
Yeah.
It's good because you're not easily gonna let things slide anymore that you used to like put in that box or in that cupboard. But it's
Yeah.
also important to remind yourself that, okay, the purpose of life is not to live life perfectly. The purpose of life is just to live it how it comes
Yeah.
and to give yourself permission for that. But I feel like that's also something you have been doing, like you're saying, so that's great. Um,
Yeah.
who's- like if you can share with the people who are watching, like what the things are for you that helped you the most to get to where you are today. Like if you would like see someone sit in front of you right now that's really in the depth of it, what would your advice for those people be? Where should they get started?
Yeah, I mean, I guess like having some support, whether from like Robin or someone similar, like a coach or a therapist, I think is really important to help put things into perspective for you on what's going on. And but for me, I think like meditation was such a huge tool for me, and I'd sort of dabbled in meditation before. But yeah, around the time we started having sessions, like you gave me a couple of like specifically tailored meditations to me, and that was really helpful. And yeah, the more that I meditated, it just put me in touch with this part of myself that was beyond all of these feelings, all of this like tsunami of emotions that was going on. And it was this, yeah, it was, I kind of had a spiritual awakening, I guess you could call it, like the more that I meditated. And it didn't happen all at once. It was a process that, meditating every day for a consistent period of time. And then suddenly I just gained this trust in that part of me. And I realized that that was the true part of me, and that these feelings, this anxiety, this grief, whatever, it was going to come and go. But that wasn't the true essence of who I was. There was this part of me, like I say, that was beyond all of that. And
Yeah.
when I got in touch with that and started to trust it more and more, and let go, that's when the magic started to happen, really. And I think that's when we sort of stopped having sessions, because I got to this point where I was like, well, as helpful as it is to listen to someone else or to watch a YouTube video or read a book or whatever, when you've got that trust in yourself, you kind of don't need to depend on these other like external resources anymore. And so I think if I could suggest like one thing for anybody, it would be to try and get in touch with that part of themselves, which I do think we all have, whether that's through meditation or yoga or whatever practice sort of works for you. But yeah, once I found that, nothing else was really a problem, and that's still true for me now. Um, so yeah, that, and then the kind of the process or the practice of surrender or acceptance, and kind of ties into the previous thing as well, to sort of surrender to that part of me and trust that that part of me was going to take care of me. But yeah, I think because I was constantly fighting my anxiety, like I said before, and when things started to change was when I stopped fighting it. And I actually had this one day, I think maybe we spoke about it, when I was really tired one day. I think I had slept really badly, and I had like loads of things to do in this day that were all quite scary, like going to the shopping center and driving around in the car, and like, well, things at the time felt really scary, even though they're all sort of normal things for me now. But I was just so tired. Like, so a lot of anxiety was coming up, but I was so tired that I didn't have the mental energy to fight it or resist it. And I realized that if I didn't fight it and resist it, it just kind of went away, or it was just fine. I could feel the anxiety and still go and do the things that I needed to do, and not let it spiral into a panic attack. And I think that was a big shift for me in understanding what surrender actually was and what acceptance actually was. Because I think when someone tells you to accept your anxiety or accept the thing that feels so horrible, you're like, well, why would I do that? Like, why would I accept this awful thing in my life? But in a counterintuitive way, it helps to just diffuse the power that it has, because you're saying, okay, you're here, you're at this anxiety, like it's here, and it's actually not going to hurt me. There's nothing that it can do to hurt me. So yeah, and I find again, it's not just with anxiety, but with all things in my life now, anything that troubles me or upsets me, if I can get to a place of genuine acceptance of it and just to surrender to that being the way that it is, it just takes away its power completely. So yeah, I would say those two things, like meditating and accepting things as they are, like that was just a big game changer for me.
That's amazing. And I'm really glad that you mentioned that because meditation always, for me, was like number one. People can get kind of scared of that as well because part of meditation is sitting with yourself. So in the beginning, it can be
Yeah.
scary, but like there's a really beautiful quote that I love that says, if you're scared of something, look closer. And I think that's what meditation does, is like when you're scared of something, actually look closer at it and see that you don't have to be scared of it. So I'm glad that you brought that up. Um,
Yeah. And also, like for me, I think now if I notice that I'm resisting something or that I'm scared of it, I think I've done the process enough times now to see that if I lean into it, then that is actually leading me to the solution in a weird way. Like the more that I avoid something or push it away, the worse it's going to get, and the further away I'm going to get from a sense of inner peace. But like, yeah, the resistance is sort of pointing me to the breakthrough a lot of the time, and yeah, that does feel really scary at the beginning to move towards the things that you're resisting, but when you've sort of built up that muscle, it becomes a really natural thing. And then yeah, stuff just doesn't stick around for me anymore. It just has this natural lifespan. A negative emotion or a negative experience, it kind of, yeah, it might be bad at a time, but then it sort of peaks and then it just kind of goes away because I'm not clinging to it. I'm not holding on to it anymore. Um, yeah. But this stuff takes a lot of practice. Like it's easy for me to say this now, but like if you'd seen me this time last year, I was like, why is this stuff not going away? And like, why can't I get rid of this anxiety? And
yeah.
so yeah, it does take practice and like courage as well, I think, to do it.
Do you have any like quotes or any like mantras or affirmations that you would repeat to yourself that would kind of be things that you held on to get through the day, or to like any life lessons, or yeah, that you just try to remember during the day or carry with you?
Hmm. Um, I'm not sure. I know a lot of the breathing exercises that you showed me like in the course, and then we did some in our sessions as well, that idea of like, feeling the fear and embracing the fear, like that was really useful.
Mhm.
Um but actually there was this one thing that came to me sort of as the process went on, which was this idea that like there's nothing to fix. I think I was in this mindset of like, I'm broken, there's something wrong with me, and I have to figure out what that thing is and find the solution and fix it. Like it's like a car that's broken down, and like there's a part that's broken, and if I could just find that part and screw it back together, then I'll be okay. And I realized that that sort of energy, that posture was just adding more resistance to the situation as well, and it wasn't allowing me to accept. So like to accept the way that I was and the way that things were. So I think that became sort of a mantra for me, like there's nothing to fix. And I would sort of say that to myself whenever anxiety came up, because I was always looking for the root of the anxiety as well. So if I had like a feeling in my stomach or my chest or my heart was going fast or whatever, I'd be like, oh, what is this? Why is it here? What's the cause of it? And again, that sort of energy is just adding more resistance to it. So whenever symptoms came up, I would just say, okay, there's nothing to fix here. There's nothing to, there's no problem here, which
Yeah,
obviously is kind of yeah, it can be quite a scary thing to do, but it became this way of yeah, finding safety within my mind and my body, that it was like, yeah, there's actually nothing wrong with me and there's nothing wrong with the situation that I'm in. It's just that I'm a bit scared right now and this will pass. But yeah, that was kind of a big thing for me. There's nothing to fix. And then that became quite a deeper sort of awakening within myself as well, just in terms of my own self-esteem, I guess, or like my sense of self-worth. That it was like, oh yeah, there's nothing wrong with me. I don't have to fix myself. I'm not this like project that needs to be worked on constantly. I can just be who I am and as I am, and that's okay. I don't have to be always pushing against myself trying to figure out what's wrong. Maybe there's actually nothing wrong.
that's such a great reminder, because again, knowing that DPDR and anxiety is coming from the nervous system, and your nervous system being in fight or flight because it thinks something's wrong, like very often that belief that something's wrong with us is actually the thing that's wrong. Like, not that there is
Yeah.
something wrong, but just the thought that there's something wrong kind of
Mm,
triggering the nervous system constantly to be on that high alert state. So I really like that, actually. Like, nothing's wrong. There's nothing to fix. Yeah,
mm.
exactly. And
Yeah, well, I was
I'm
thinking about
assuming
it.
that also helped with your health anxiety then. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a huge part of it because I think I didn't really understand that, anxiety had all these ways of manifesting itself physically. So whenever I got a symptom of anxiety, I thought it was a symptom of something that was seriously wrong with my body. And so it took me a long time to trust that, like, yeah, like a skipped heartbeat or a chest pain or a racing heart was actually a symptom of anxiety. It wasn't a symptom of a heart attack. And again, you kind of have to go through it enough times to see that that's not the case, like to learn that, which is sort of exposure therapy, I guess. But yeah, that was a big thing for me. And but it's interesting you say that because I had a little flare up, I guess, of anxiety a couple of months ago where I was suddenly feeling quite anxious again every day. I didn't have panic attacks, but I was waking up not feeling that sense of comfort in my body. And I sort of naturally went back to that mindset of, oh, there's something wrong. What's going on? You know, there's something wrong with my body or something in my life is not in place. And then after about a week of this, I think a lot of the teachings that you'd given me and a lot of the stuff I'd learned from this process came back up, and it was like, oh, well, actually, what if there's nothing to fix? What if it's just that I'm creating all this fear by being like scared of the fear? And then when I had that awareness, within like a couple of hours, I was able to just shift out of it and it just went away. And it's kind of amazing, really, when you realize how much of this is just being created by your own mind. And yeah, I always think of panic attacks. It's like it's like a car alarm. So it's like your body has this natural alarm system to, to give you this sense of fear when things are going wrong. And you need that system, like you need to know when you're actually in danger so that you can run away or whatever. But it's like a car alarm that goes off at the wrong times when you're having panic attacks. So like a leaf falls on the car and the car alarm goes off, or like a cat jumps on the car and the car alarm goes off. Like that's the experience of having panic attacks. Is like your natural fear response is just in overdrive, or it's responding to things that actually aren't dangerous. So part of the recovery process was just about calming that down and reassuring myself that yeah, there's nothing wrong, like it's just a leaf or it's just a cat or but like I say, my anxiety's not gone completely because we need anxiety to tell us when things are wrong and when to move away from certain things in our life. And but now I trust that it's there for a reason, and I can listen to it as well. That's part of what the meditations you gave me were all about, was about actually listening to the anxiety. What does it have to say? What does it want me to know? Whereas before I was like, I don't want to hear whatever this feeling has to say. I want it to go away. I don't want to listen, like,
Yeah.
hear it out. But the more that I did listen to it, and that's one of the like skills I think I've learned from this, is to listen to those feelings. And it's like I think I've heard this somewhere online somewhere, maybe Tara Brach said it, but it's like, a feeling or an emotion is a teacher. It has something to teach you. And as long as you keep pushing it away and ignoring the lesson, it will still be there. But if you just let it in, welcome it, and allow it to teach you the lesson, then once it's had its voice, it goes away. It doesn't need to be there anymore.
That's
Um,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's really nice to think about. And like maybe to finish off, do you have like any last little motivational thing to say to people that are gonna leave this video in a second now, and just like a word of courage or anything that you'd like to tell people?
Um, Yeah, I don't know. I just like keep going, I guess. Maybe that sounds really cheesy, but yeah, I got to lots of points in this journey where I felt so hopeless. I felt like things would never change. And but if you just keep going with it and keep persisting, then things will change. And yeah, just to trust yourself and believe in yourself, because again, I think it's so easy to get into that place of like, oh, the answer is out there somewhere, it's on this Reddit forum or in this book or whatever. And but just to kind of sit with yourself and go within, and trust that you do have all the answers within you, which might feel like a scary thing or a counterintuitive thing. But um yeah, maybe that's the only motivational thing I can say, is just trust yourself, because that's the way out of this.
Yeah.
Trust yourself.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you so much, Charlotte, for today. You shared so much that I think is so helpful for so many people. And I love hearing you speak. You talk very well. I don't know, that's maybe a weird compliment to give, but like you're so,
No, it's nice. Thank you.
you could like do TED Talks on anxiety, I think.
Well, you never know. Maybe
Never
that's what's
know.
next.
If you ever do one, let me know and I'll come.
Yeah, I will. No, thank you. I've really enjoyed it. Hopefully, I've not been
Yeah.
too, yeah, talking too much.
Oh,
But
no, no,
no, thank
no.
you for having me on. It's been really fun.
It was perfect. Thank you so much for everyone that watched today. If you have any questions for Charlotte, I'm sure she'd be happy to answer them in the comments, in case people have a little question or just want to reply to this interview. You guys are always welcome. And
Yes.
for the people watching, thank you for joining today. I hope you have a really beautiful weekend and that you enjoyed watching this video with us today. And I'll see you guys next week. Bye.